So y'all tell me, want to make sure y'all can see this. Y'all can see, oh, seeing the wrong side. Cool. So y'all can see that, right? Awesome. All right. So 2-1 buy downs. I mean, they're a thing. They're a real thing now. A lot of people are talking about them. A lot of people are asking about it from the buying side, the selling side. So I figured it's best if we let's break it down, details. So 2-1 buy down, what is it? Basically, it is a temporary interest rate reduction for the first 2 years of a person's mortgage. So what they do, it is actually locked at the current market rate. So if we look at this current rate, let's say the market's at 7% right now. So we're locking their mortgage at a 7% rate at the current market rate. But what a 2-1 buy down does is it reduces their interest rate. So an effective reduction in interest rates by 2% that first year and 1% the second year. So obviously their monthly payments are very affected by this, where that 2%, they have that big reduction, 1%, they have a slight reduction. Then for the remainder of their mortgage, they're at that current market rate that we locked in at today. Okay. So I have to bring this up. We're not going to talk about this in detail today, but 3-2-1 buy downs. We've got 2-1 buy downs. Pretty much everybody's heard that. They're familiar with it to an extent. 3-1 buy downs, it's the same principle. Okay. So we're locking in at the current market rates today. So at the end of their mortgage, that years 4 through 30, that current market rate, 7%. But a 3-2-1, very similar to a 2-1, where it's 3% interest rate reduction in year 1, 2% in year 2, and a 1% in year 3. Obviously, from the buyer side, this is super advantageous. You have a very big difference in your monthly payments with a 3% rate reduction in that year 1. Year 2, it's 2%, so it's still stepped year after year. But for just keeping things simple today, let's stick with the 2-1 buy down for the purposes of this presentation. So here's where we can start taking notes. Who can pay a 2-1 buy down? We've all talked about the sellers being obligated, being the ones to pay the premium on a 2-1 buy down. But in reality, it can be a plethora of different parties. So any of those interested parties, it can be the seller, which includes those home builders, a contractor who's building a house to sell it, listed on the market. They can absolutely pay for this premium. That's who we normally see do it, is the seller from the seller side. But we can also look at the realtors paying or the lenders paying. So it's you and I both. It's not just you. It's not just me. We can both pitch in. If we need to get a deal done, if this helps get a deal done, this is absolutely something that we can put in for. So I know from the lending side of things, what we can do in these situations, if we've heard of buying down interest rates, well, we can actually buy up the interest rate. Current rate's at 7%. There's a credit that we can provide if they go to 7.25%. Well, that credit would then go towards the temporary buy down. So they're getting a higher rate for the 30 years, but taking advantage of the lower temporary rate now, expecting that with the market predictions refinancing down the road to where that might make sense. I would want to look at it case by case in those situations. But you can have these different interested parties putting in to pay for a 2-1 buy down. So if you only take notes on one slide, this is going to be the slide to take notes on. Here's where we really get into the nitty gritty of 2-1 buy down programs. So for us, it's a primary home or a second home. We do not do temporary buy downs on investment properties, okay? So primary residence or a second home. When we look at different loan programs and what this is available to match with, we have conventional loans with FHA, VA, USDA, and we actually have a jumbo investor who will also participate in the 2-1 buy downs. So pretty much almost every loan program has this availability to it. So we're not excluding any different market, whether it's an FHA market, a USDA market, a conventional market. These all have these options. Again, paid by the seller, the realtor, or the lender. We're working on a borrower paid 2-1 buy down program. There's a lot that goes on from the compliance standpoint for the borrower to temporarily buy down their interest rate. But also a note, the fee on the 2-1 buy down can be split between these different parties. So from the lending side, we can pitch in, the realtor can pitch in, the seller can pitch in. We can all put in a piece to make this whole. Last thing to note here, purchases is obviously what we're going to focus on. It's available on purchases and rate term refis. This is not a program for cash out refis. Just a little side note. I want to bring this up. There's a cost involved with 2-1 buy downs and buying down these rates. We still have to stick to our max seller concessions according to current underwriting guidelines. So on conventional loans, this is the one with the most detailed breakdown. Anybody putting less than 10%, we're used to this, that 3% maximum seller concession or interested party contribution. That's what IPC means up here on the right. So we still have to stay below that 3%. Or if they're putting more than 10% down, yes, you can go to 6% on a conventional loan. You can go to 9% on a conventional loan if they're putting 25% or more. Now, FHA, USDA, VA, they have their own max seller concession breakdowns. Jumbo, that normally follows a conventional market. So we still have to keep in mind that if the temporary buy down costs about 2 points to temporarily buy down the rate for a buyer, well, we only have 1% more of the sales price that we would be able to put towards other closing costs and prepaids. So we want to be very cautious of that going in, knowing how much cash the buyer has available, how much of a credit they need in order to cover their closing costs and prepaids, and any fluff we can look to put towards this. So talking about 2-1 buy downs, doing this deep dive, I wanted to go through kind of what it takes to do this. So essentially what we do in these programs is go ahead and have the sellers prepay the difference in interest between the interest rates throughout the years. So during that 2% interest rate reduction of year one, the money that's being put up front by the seller, by whichever party it is, that is basically paying for the difference in interest in that year, and then again the next year. So the way we handle this from the mortgage side, we actually deposit that, we put that money into a different escrow account, where each month we're taking money out of that, subsidizing the buyer's payment to make that payment full at that current market rate. So basically the seller's paying for it into a separate escrow account at closing, and every month we're taking money from that account to make that monthly mortgage payment full each month. Okay, so when we talk about cost, there's always a cost associated with these things. And what we did, just a standard $400,000 purchase, 5% down, and showing you a breakdown of how we price this out. So what you'll see, current market rate is at that 7%, 5% for the first year, 6% for the second year, and then 7% for years 3 through 30. The difference in the monthly payments is what we're really focusing on here. So the difference in monthly payments on this, $488 between a 7% and a 5% rate. We take that over 12 months, we add that up, we do the same with the 6% for the second year, add those up, and that's where we get the premium cost for doing the seller paid. In this example, it comes out to right over 2% of the purchase price, 4%. Okay. So what we normally think of when we, in past markets or in current markets, we think about, well, why don't we just do a price reduction? This is traditionally what we go to. So that same cost, what we do here, just want to put this in perspective. We do the same cost of the buyer offering $8,857 less on that 400,000 purchase. That affects their monthly payment. It does. It saves them money by doing a lower purchase price. Shocking, right? Well, so the new price $391, their new payment be $2,472. What this would do for them, it saves them $60 a month. I would love to have $60 a month extra in my bank account. Never going to complain about that, right? Well, that's not bad, but let's look at this buy down strategy and how that affects their monthly payments and their savings. So what we're going to do here is keep the purchase price the same at 400,000. We're not going to reduce that, but act as if we're putting in a temporary buy down paid by the seller. Okay. So in this case, the seller, they're still going to get the same amount of money back at closing as they would have if they would have reduced their price by that same amount. But what this does, it makes it much more attractive and affordable from the buyer standpoint. And then from the seller standpoint, it makes that house more marketable, showing that they can offer that price reduction. That interest rate payment reduction up front to temporarily help those buyers. So what we want to remember, the price reduction, doing just $8,800 less on the sales price, saving them $60 a month. With the temporary buy down, here's what we're looking at. So in that first year, they're saving $488 a month on their monthly payment. Year two, they're saving about $250 a month on their monthly payment. And then years 3 through 30, it goes back to that full 7% market rate that we locked in at today. And there's no savings at that point. So years 3 through 30, you don't have any savings. Whereas just doing the price reduction, it's $60 for the life of the loan. Okay. And what I want to touch on, just a little side note, and this is key, this is a big step. If a customer were to refinance or sell that property, get rid of their mortgage in any way during that temporary buy down period, those remaining escrow funds are put back towards the principal balance on their mortgage. So it's not money lost. That's a key here. It's a key takeaway, that any money that isn't used in the temporary buy down program is still money in the buyer's pocket. It's going to go pay down their principal balance when they refinance or when they go to sell the mortgage. Pay the mortgage off. That money goes towards their principal balance. So a little key there. So $488 a month savings at 5%, $250 at the 6%. So what does this do? Let's compare the two. Do you want $60 saved per month, or do you want $488 for the first year, $250 for the second year? What I didn't put it on a slide, but I took that $8,800 in cost to do a 2-1 buy down. I divided that by $60 a month. So what's the break even on doing a price reduction in that savings versus doing the 2-1 buy down? It was a little over 12 years to have a $8,800 savings on $60 a month. That's a long time to get your money's worth on a price reduction. Okay. So what we need to look at, effectively, you're reducing that buyer's monthly payment by 19% in the first year for a temporary buy down, as compared to, let's take it a step back. What was that percentage on? I'm not seeing it on the price reduction. I didn't break it down here, but a 19% reduction in a buyer's monthly payment and a 10% reduction, a 9.8% reduction in year two from a buyer's monthly payment standpoint. Big reductions there from the buyer side. We can see the benefit. So what would we have to do to break this down from a price reduction standpoint to have the same amount of savings? Well, when we look at this on a $400,000 purchase, 5% down, the seller would have to reduce their purchase price by about $73,000 in order to show that same savings from a monthly payment standpoint for the buyer. So what seller is going to reduce their sales price by $73,000 up front just because the buyer wants a lower monthly payment? I don't know of anybody that's going to do that. So what I wanted to show you here, it's a full breakdown. I ran this, maybe 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago now at this point, but I was showing a listing agent, $265,000 purchase, what it was originally in the first column. If we just did nothing, they bought it as is, what that current market looked like, what their monthly payment looked like. But then I went and compared and showed the breakdown between a 2-1 buy down strategy and a sales price concession. The sales price concession is just the same cost from the seller's pocket as what it would be for the 2-1 buy down. So a lot of data in here, a lot of information in this, but focus on these highlighted areas. So with the 2-1 buy down strategy, they're getting 5.125. They're getting 2% less during that first year. That's a $330 savings on a $265,000 house. Their payment goes from $2,331 to $2,000 over 5 years. So that saves them $5,018 a month, $5,118. So, and that's essentially the cost to do the 2-1 buy down here. It's 5 1/8 for the first year, 6 1/8 for the second year, and then it goes to the 7 1/8 for the rest of the term. So over 5 years, that's $5,000. The other option they have here is just doing a simple price reduction. That's the easier way to do it. There's less involved, but a price reduction, you're staying at that 7.125. You're saving $42 a month. So over 5 years, $426 versus $5,000. From a buyer's point of view, I'd like to save $5,000 instead of $400. From the seller's point of view, it's the same money out of pocket at the end of the day. Let's help the buyer, keep them excited, and same cost from the sales side. So here, it's another way to show the same breakdown. This is something that's pretty easy we put together to show a client what this looks like for them. Now, you'll see you got the purchase price, the down payment, everything entered in here, what their monthly payment's going to look like for the first year, the second year, and then years 3 through 30, the total amount that this is going to cost, the savings. And then we also threw in here, okay, if you were to do a price reduction instead of a 2-1 buy down, what do those savings look like? What's that monthly payment look like? So this screen, this is something 5 minutes for me to put it together and send it to a client. Giving them, I think this gives them all the details that are necessary without all the background noise to what it looks like for their particular purchase or their particular sale, if you're on the listing side. So how do we calculate this? Kind of went over this earlier. 1 year, you're taking the monthly payment savings by 12 months from a 7% rate to a 5% rate. That savings over 12 months, add that to the savings over year 2 for that 12 months savings. That's where we come up with our total premium for what this is going to cost from the seller, from the realtor, from the lender, or from a combination of us all. So this is literally the breakdown. I think that makes sense to everybody. So what we have to think about, I'm sure y'all are getting these questions. Why is the home not selling? Why am I not getting multiple offers? Rates are going up. What's the buyer's expectation right now? Are the buyers scared? How much do we need to reduce my price? Or, you know, we get this question. I think this last one's a great one. Why do the comps support the sales price but no offers? Well, the 2-1 buy down program is something that we can put in place, something that we have put in place to help in each one of these cases. So we can acknowledge from last year, 2 years ago, rates are higher. Payments are becoming unaffordable, at least from the buyer's perspective, unaffordable for current home prices. Well, the 2-1 buy down helps with that temporary adjustment, that effective interest rate reduction. It allows buyers to stage into a full monthly payment. So we can think about it if, well, we'll touch on that in a minute. You can take advantage of home ownership now, buy the property you want, buy the right property that you were looking for, get it now at that temporary reduction in your monthly payments. And we can fully expect, like the last note here, that we expect forecasts show that interest rates will come down to a point where a refinance might make sense and take advantage of the appreciation, the equity now, worry about those long-term monthly payments down the road. We hear it all the time, marry the home, date the rate. I should also put in there, divorce the rent. I saw that, maybe 2 weeks ago. I thought that was pretty good. But all perspectives coming from this 2-1 buy down program. So one of the last keys here before we wrap this up, when we're putting this in an offer, in a purchase agreement, there is certain language that we want to see in that purchase agreement, in that addendum. So we always put in there, seller to contribute X% or $8,000 towards buyer's closing cost and prepaids. We see that all the time. But what we need to do in these situations is actually, it's the same verbiage. Let me go back. Same verbiage, but we're adding in that last point, closing costs, prepaids, and or temporary buy down. What this allows us to do from our side is go look at the temporary buy down, the cost, the benefits, any leftover money we can put towards closing costs or prepaids, or mix and match between the 3 different items. So when we talk about verbiage, that's what we want to see in our contracts and our addendums. One last slide here. We've got a few marketing pieces that we put out. We just rolled these out, been putting a few together where we can do this specific to a listing, showing price, showing what the total buy down is going to cost, what the savings are going to be. It's pretty much all broken down here. So I think this would be good from the listing side to have open houses or to put in a buyer's hand when they're looking at a property. Again, super simple, super easy to put together, but some good marketing pieces that our marketing team has put together to help us get this word out and just show the options to buyers and to sellers in this market. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take a drink of water. I'm going to open it up. If anybody has any questions, anything they've run into with this, feel free, jump in. We've got a few minutes left here and we can wrap this up. No questions. That's good. That means I covered everything completely, 100%, right? All right, I see some questions in the chat. Let's see. So being asked, I guess y'all can read the chat too, huh? We're just asking for the seller contributions, concessions like we normally would. So it really just comes down to how you're crediting the funds on your end, correct? Yes, that's correct. So a little different language. We'll add in that one little and or temporary buy down. That lets us take that and allocate it towards a temporary buy down if we choose that that's the right route to take. Good question. And another question, how is that more attractive to a buyer than the seller paying an amount that goes towards paying points? Okay, good question. So when we look at doing a permanent buy down, to permanently buy down a buyer's interest rate from, so you got 10 minutes, from say, let's just use the example we've used in this, an $8,000 buy down at a $400,000 purchase, the current rate is 7%. Well, that $8,000 might buy the rate down to 6.5 in the current market. Just using rough numbers here. So effectively, you're at 6.5% for 30 years. Well, the temporary buy down, you're going from 7% to 5% the first year, 6% the second year. The savings there in the short term, the temporary buy down is a short-term reduction. Permanent buy down is a long-term reduction. We have to look at the strategy, the plan for the buyer, the market, the forecast of the market. If that buyer expects to hold that mortgage for 30 years, a permanent buy down might make more sense. Your savings over 30 years is going to be higher than that temporary buy down savings over 2 years for 30 years. That makes sense. But with the forecast in the market, in the mortgage market, we completely expect interest rates to decrease coming into next year, late this year, early next year, to the point where if you pay points to permanently buy down a rate now, you put that whole 8,000 to get you from 7 to 6.5. If you refinance next April or May at 5.5%, well, how much money did you actually realize saved from that permanent buy down? You realize 6-7 months worth of a 6.5% rate instead of a 7% rate. Whereas if you do the temporary buy down, you realize a 2% rate reduction, and that money that isn't spent goes towards your principal balance. With the permanent buy down, you lose that money that went into the purchase of your mortgage when you locked in an interest rate with the permanent rate buy down. Okay. So if you refinance that, you're out. You probably realize $1,000 in savings between now and this time next year with a permanent rate buy down. So that $7,000 that you spent that you would actually realize over the next 5 years, well, you've lost that money when you refinance. That doesn't go towards principal. That's already been consumed on the secondary market when we sell that mortgage. So that's where that temporary buy down and that key, where the money goes into an escrow account, and that money that isn't used from that account pays down your principal balance. That's where that really becomes a major key. Long answer to a short question. Awesome. Well, I'll put the little scan my info. If you need my info, all of y'all have it. But any questions on this, if you want any of that marketing material, feel free to reach out to me. You all have my cell phone number, and happy to put that together for any listings, any open houses, things like that. Hope this helps. A little deep dive. Appreciate y'all stepping on with me, and I will see y'all around. So y'all take care.